All right, let's talk about the final day that we've seen so far, day 4 of 12, where they've announced the canvas. The canvas has been around for a while, again, in limited availability for just their paid subscription tier. The idea with the canvas, again, here is this recognition that a chat interface is insufficient for many use cases. And so if you ask it to help you write something, if you ask it to help you evaluate something, if you're asking it for help with code, Canvas is a feature where it'll launch into a document editing mode. There is a document on the right and the ChatGPT chat on the left, and you can essentially ask ChatGPT to co-manipulate the document with you. And this has been, limited availability. You can imagine the document, by the way, of being like a Google Doc, right? So you can go in there, you can edit and add and delete things. This has been in limited availability. It's now available generally, and they've added new features. They've added a full Python compilation environment where it can kind of execute Python right in the browser, and it can help you code. And it actually has a code editor with line numbers and things. They've also made it so that it can comment on your documents. So just like in Google Docs, it can highlight parts of the document and leave comments for you to accept, reject, and otherwise action. And so it's Canvas general availability with a code execution engine for Python, with commenting, and you can also now add Canvas features to your custom GPTs as well. So that was the day 4 announcement. Have you had a chance to play with Canvas, Hooman? What do you reckon?
Yeah, well, I've been watching it for a while. So I have two thoughts on it. I think it's a nice half step towards a different type of feature. And in particular for me, like I'll tactically as a user, I don't know if you have this problem, but like sometimes I'll say, hey, generate an email for me. I want to send something to my company about A, B, C, or D, right? And they'll generate it, but you're in that awkward position where like, oh, well, I don't like this line. I don't like that in line. You can't work on it in like a project basis. So now I think they've created that. It just radically shifts my experience. I can do everything there. I don't have to move it to a Google Doc and like go back and forth and cut and paste. So tactically, I think you'll see a lot more engagement. Number one. Number two, though, it's interesting because like you look at all the things they can do with this construct and you look at how it could disrupt like Google Docs and get them in enterprise, like big scale. When you look at the company, OpenAI, this company has the potential, like there have to be like a Google, right? They have to be like a Microsoft. So where are areas that we spend time on Google? It's not just search, which by the way, ChatGPT and GPT, they're introducing search, right? It's also like document creation, document collaboration. So by taking this like half step, I think they're dipping their toe in the water and saying like, hey, we could have a code editor here. We could go to Google Docs. We're going to let you guys kind of show us some different ways, but who knows? I mean, God, you can see them extending it out and building a platform out of it. And like all of a sudden, they can like, we almost can like delete the notion of a doc and there's just these canvases. I mean, there's companies that have been trying to reinvent the doc, there's like Coda and all these other companies. So I don't know, there's something here where like, if you could see them pulling off like a really interesting move through learnings here where they disrupt like the productivity and collaboration space in a meaningful way because they need to, like they should do that. And like, if I look 10 years from now, we should be communicating using OpenAI, right? Which then means they're going to have to build some sort of SMTP client. How that looks different, like, so I think they're starting to think about that. And they have a whole group of people that they hired on business, right? Like under Kevin Wheel, they have a whole business unit. So I have to believe they're like chomping at the bit to start to work with this thing.
What you have to realize is, and you're pointing to this, Hooman, is that OpenAI has a massive distribution disadvantage. They have Microsoft using them, but Microsoft can choose to use other models and implement them the way however they want. But Google has devices in every pocket. Apple has devices in every pocket. They have devices in every home. They have Chrome. They have everything, right? So everyone is just baked in to Microsoft and Google and Apple. And so OpenAI has great tech, but they're not able to get into your pocket, get into your muscle memory, get into your workflows. And so they need to change that real quick. And so they released a thing where it'll change Chrome to send all searches to OpenAI search. And they're now having to start building workflows, tools, devices that will get them into your pocket and into your workflow. This is a really important lesson for founders, right? When we talk about in Silicon Valley this idea of full stack disruption. And if you're building a kind of developer platform or you're trying to change the way something is done, you shouldn't or can't really rely on implementers, downstream implementers, to do it the way you wish they're going to do it. You have to set the bar. You have to demonstrate what the native next gen version of a thing looks like. So let me give you some examples. Google for a long time was struggling to get device manufacturers to make great Android devices. And they would just implement Android in the shittiest possible ways with all this bloatware on top. And so Google had to launch the Pixel range to say, this is how you make a fucking Android device. Pure Android, beautiful design, great cameras. They needed, as the platform tier, or the OS tier in this case, with Android, they needed to plant the flag for what great native Android devices look like. Microsoft had to do the same thing with Windows with their own Surface devices. Intel had to do that with reference devices, although they didn't release their own Intel computers, right? I used to believe in this kind of platform purity where you wanted to stay in the platform layer and not cannibalize the application or device layer. But it's turned out history has proven that no, if you have something fundamentally disruptive at the platform or OS layer, you need your own application layer example to show the OEM or integrator community, the app developer community, what great looks like. And so what OpenAI is doing here is saying, we need to build our own Google Docs. We need to build our own collaboration environment that is AI native, that sets the bar for what AI native interaction models look like. And then Google and Microsoft and whatever can start adapting their workflows because we're setting the bar. And guess what? If they don't move fast enough, that's okay. We will grab a bunch of consumer engagement and workflow, insert ourselves into workflows and build our own distribution as well. And so this is a really powerful demonstration of the idea of when new technology emerges, new winners and losers emerge, that when you have a platform layer innovation that can affect the end user, you have to go full stack and build native examples. It's really demonstrating all the lessons of Silicon Valley over decades. Sam Altman and the team are just masters, ninjas at this. And it's very impressive to watch.
I agree. I think they're doing some strong work. I think right now they've established that they have a really strong shipping culture. They're putting out quality work. I think given their valuation and given where they have to go, I think when you're thinking about their long-term strategy, you always have to remember they're going to have to generate revenue to scale of a Google and Microsoft, which means they have to take market share away from key application areas. So whether they build around that, like that is going to be the case. And to your point, the advantage that they have, much like when Facebook did it, Facebook would start with social native. And now OpenAI can say, you know what? Here's how you would build communications if you had an agentic workflow. Here's how you would build, collaboration. Now, the question is, I think that they don't even know how far they want to take it. And there's some experimentation.
No.
But what Google did, the same thing. Like I remember when Google was search and then Paul Buckeye and team built Gmail. And then they now had all of a sudden this powerful tool so they could use it for auth and everyone would have a Google account. What's a Google account? Like, remember when Google was accountless? Like you had no relationship with Google, but Gmail created an account and then they started building a whole suite around that. And we've become accustomed to that, but they built that thing out. And their whole play was like, okay, you can use Office, but you have to download this stuff. You're on Windows, but like, what if you're on the go? What if you're in the browser? We're going to build these browser native, super fast, Ajax rich applications. And so that was the advantage that they played out. And that's why we have G Suite. Can OpenAI do something similar and say, hey, you know what? We're rebuilding everything from scratch. Can we show you what AI native is going to look like? I think the answer is they have that ambition. And I think they have the potential. Can they execute? We'll see. We'll see. I mean, that's their move, but they have all the money in the world.
Yeah, I suspect, from the outside that they don't know how far they want to go with this. I think you're right. And there's probably some debate internally about how deep they want to go in the application stack. Look, I think the worst case scenario by going deeper and deeper into the application stack is that they agitate and inspire the developer ecosystem to build better, more AI native workflows, probably powered by their models, right? And so the rising tide lifts all boats. The best case is that they become the new winner in productivity, communications, and other applications, and they take market share on the consumer side. That's like a win-win, right? There's no downside. Whatever way they choose and however it plays out.
They might also buy things. Imagine if they're like, you know what, I'm going to buy Superhuman. Superhuman's been doing some really interesting work using AI, right? To help you co-author emails. Like maybe they're like Superhuman is the right thing to do. Now all of a sudden everyone has a Superhuman account. They push that out. I mean, OpenAI is going to cross 1 billion users soon. right? So they co-market that thing. They also get some of the users superhuman. And I think the most critical thing that they have to do is start to determine from a business perspective where they're going to start and stop. Because as you've seen, and you've had a lot of experience in developer ecosystems, they need to do some level of signaling. So people are like, is this safe to build on this thing for 5 years? Or am I going to constantly, am I building on sand? Like Facebook early on with the Facebook platform, everyone wanted to build on it, but then it was just like, well, actually you can't do third-party ads. I'm just kidding. You can't do any ads. Oh, we're taking away the graph. Oh, remember that canvas on Facebook, by the way? We're taking that away too. Build everything through. And it was too hard, right? There was a few companies obviously got huge, like Zynga. And so, there's a lot of good past data, I think, for them from platforms. But Apple did it a better way. Apple people knew how to compete and where to compete. We can argue they were charging an exorbitant rent, but it was clear how to play.
So this is slightly different though. The difference here is Facebook was providing a lot of surface area for distribution in the feed, in the canvas, and what have you. And so they would create surface and they would take it away. Here, OpenAI is actually not providing much or any surface area. You can't build innovation into ChatGPT. I mean, a little bit with GPTs and
Not yet.
no, not yet. But what they are offering is utility without distribution or with very little distribution. And so, they have a very, very strong developer developer utility, developer capability, which I don't see them taking that stuff away. I think they just keep putting stuff out, and they're also building their own consumer applications.
This is the art and the science, I think, of like building out, a platform, like ecosystem, and you have imperfect information. You have to build a business. Someone else who cracks the code using your open platform, you realize that should be in our house. Is always this like song and dance, and they're going back and forth. And I think they're going to do that. But there's some interesting, weird non-linearity to the marketplace. Google is getting, pressure from the previous administration to divest Chrome. What if OpenAI buys it? Holy moly. Could you imagine?
Wow. That would be incredible.
And then all of a sudden it's like, they can put OpenAI search as the default. They can start adding cool functionality where like you can have the agent with you as you're browsing and saving things, and it changes bookmark. I mean, it mind blowing. Like there's all this weird stuff that's going to happen. Now they might introduce their own browser, right? They might say, well, if I can't buy it, I'm going to introduce my own browser. What if they bought Mozilla? But like there's always, every so often, there's this thematic shift that enables next generation platforms. We shifted from why do we all use Chrome from Google? Because Google was known to be fast as hell. And we open up Chrome. Remember how fast it loaded that first? You're just like, oh my God, I can't believe I browsed any other way before this. What if you're browsing with their browser? You're like, oh my God, this was the stupidest experience. This thing is just so intelligent. I don't have to remember anything. I don't have to bookmark anything. Like there's so much like rich context that it's gathering. And you're like, I don't want to browse another way. And then all of a sudden distribution problem solved. Bam. I don't know. There's just cool things.
This is such an interesting thought experiment because Google can't do these things because
they're not allowed.
They're not allowed.
By the way, this is why Microsoft failed on search, because Microsoft could have crushed Google. Microsoft had all the browsers. IE was 90% market share. They could have put the shittiest search engine in and defaulted. They weren't allowed. And so that created space.
Google would and bundle Gemini as part of the browser and what have you. And
they're being careful now.
But you know what? The Trump administration, well, actually, you know what?
We'll see.